thank you for presenting challenges that will deepen our faith and our obedience. Today, we come to purify our lives that we might not hold back from serving you and even more. Receive us humbly. Guide us with strength to help us to see that you will never lead us where your grace cannot carry us. May the words and spirit of this sermon be acceptable in your sight. How, so be it, Abba. Amen.
Amen.
This service has a lot of diversity in it, so just hold on. We're going to have a little bit of diversity as we go through this sermon. You know, that's a tough sermon. That's really a pointed sermon about, if your hand sins, cut it off. If your eye sins, I'd have a whole blind congregation. That too, I know. There's a very pointed point that is made about purification. And purification, although what you reap from purification is that you serve others better. But being purified doesn't necessarily feel like a walk in the park. Purification usually has something to do with, squeezing our will and our ego and our need to control right out of us till we fall on our knees and to be purified. And so I started to think about this. When I was married to Michael, he was a jeweler. And he told me about gold. He said, pure gold is 24 karat. It's heated and heated and heated until there is no impurity in it all. So as a metal that is pure gold, it's very soft. It scratches very easily. So for jewelry, rarely do they use 24 karat. If they use 10, 12, 14, 16, it means that gold has some impurity in it, but it is in fact the impurity that gives it some strength. So there's a story, a real life story about fire purifying gold. And so after I had that, I thought about, well, that's helpful, Gina. Now what are you going to do? I'm sure that most every one of us has had some kind of a spiritual purification in our lives somewhere that we did, And I remember that I got in a little trouble when I got divorced. I thought drinking was just the thing I should do, and gosh, I had difficulty with that. And so for a long period of time, I abstained completely and learned spiritual steps in the 12-step program, which run 4 through 9. You can see that, 4 through 9. The forgiveness, purification piece, 4 through 9, there's 12. Did you ever add that up? Do the math. How much goes into forgiving? And then I also was with a Native American partner who was Sioux, and I became introduced to the Sweat Lodge. And that became, for me, a place to really and deeply get in touch with who I am. How many people have done a Native Sweat Lodge? Got a few. For those of you that don't, you go into, there's a whole process with the numbers of 4 rounds, and you go in this little kind of hut made to specification that's covered with black plastic. And inside, you sit on the ground and there's a pit that they bring the rocks in. It is hot. Let me tell you, the first round, you just about want to run through the door, if you could see where the door was to run through. And more, in some traditions, all the rocks are put in, and other traditions, rocks are brought in each round. And I thought, boy, that is a purification. I remember in one sweat was the particular one for purification. I saw myself laying underneath a stream. And I could see and I could also breathe, but when I looked to the heavens, I saw a big break, like a V, coming down to the earth. And in that, I heard crying. In that, I heard a kind of crying that, I don't know if you've ever listened to people who wail at funerals. Sometimes they're there. Native American are very demonstrative about their loss of someone they love. And so you hear that it's like a mother who's lost a child. And I heard that and realized that for me, humanity was out of sync with each other. That our relationships were not whole enough, and it was causing all kinds of tearing all over the world. That was That was a real powerful sweat that time for me. It's individual to what everybody else gets. And I thought, boy, this is like Fear Factor or Survivor before they ever came out. Then all of a sudden I asked Irene Crawford out. She was late an hour. I waited though, because I'm stupid, I think. I waited and waited, I couldn't believe I was getting stood up. Finally, I just thought, 10 more minutes and I'm going to go. Here she comes. I said, you're late. She goes, I was drying fruit. For years, I couldn't throw that fruit dryer out. We didn't use it, but it had holy meaning to me, that fruit. That was the drying fruit that made her late. So, she came out, and here I get, right next to someone who started a Christian MCC. It was a part of a group in MCC in Billings. And again, she was the one that was called from God to come to Great Falls and fulfill the prayers of this one, which brought me along. And so, she never said I had to go to church. I never got kicked out of church. She just said, I do this on Sunday. So, I decided, well, it's probably time I moved on. There's another purification coming for me, and I will move on to a new place, and I joined MCC. On the first Sunday I attended. I took the membership class prior to, and on the first Sunday that I got to attend worship, I became a member. So, that story. That story about being called and answering the call. And recently I was looking at some snapshots we had of Ron anointing me with oil, the last service there to come to Great Falls and move. And although it was horrendously great for people, it was also very sad. We all cried the last service I preached because I love Billings Church. I loved it. I came here and built a new love, but I had some purification to go through. It's not that I had to have purification to go through for everything that happens, but I did have to have some. Do you realize that you as congregants hold a higher standard of living for me than you do for yourself? Let me say that again.
Yeah?
Do you as congregants hold a higher standard of living for me than you do for yourselves?
Yes.
Well, I'm on show 24/7, being watched, eyes all over, waiting to look for a little humanness to crucify me with, amen?